So since the lockdown era had occurred and thus everything went to hell, WWE and AEW have been trying to counterbalance this whole situation with doing shows, even though there's 100 different questions with this problem and this idea. But I digress about the situation regarding the COVID crisis and how the wrestling industry is handling it. But there's always been this thing that's been happening. One thing that people were saying is being popularized or reignited. At times, some people think it was invented this year, is the term of cinematic matches. And we've had quite a bunch in the last couple months. We've had Undertaker versus AJ Styles, Bray Wyatt's character deconstruction of John Cena, Adam Cole versus He Who Must Not Be Named, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa in The Final Beat, the Spring Stampede, and the greatest wrestling match ever. And there was a thing that Dave Meltzer brought up regarding Edge versus Orton's matchup about how he could theoretically give it a 5-star rating because he wanted to, but he said it would be unfair to the 5-star ratings and post and beyond 5-star matches that have worked 5-star matches, but however, there's just one major problem when it comes to these matches and for cinematic matches in general. They're all edited. They're all, like, Undertaker and AJ Styles' Boneyard match wasn't done in one take. It was made hours upon hours of filming, and Taker even injured himself by piercing his arm, so that wasn't planned. Like, the minute that happened, they had to stop filming and help him recover his arm injury that he almost sustained and whatnot. And it's not been a familiar concept when it comes to the cinematic wrestling stuff. Like, it's been around since, I say, late 80s at best. I like, when you think about it, it's like, I believe it was WrestleMania, and I think it involves, I can't remember, but they did a street brawl kind of thing, but the most popular one being the Final Edition, or the Stone Cold Booker T brawl in the grocery store. But yeah, cinematic wrestling matches are not new to the industry. It's more like, oh, it existed, we just never gave it a name. So heading into the swamp match between Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt, it's led to a question. Should cinematic matches be rated? And here's what I think. Ultimately, not in the traditional sense. I think they should be rated. They were wrestling matches. Well, for the most part, they were at least classified as a wrestling match. But I think they should try something different with the rating approach. So instead of the traditional, where you watch a match and then decide the rating and break it down bit by bit, like you do with a Kenny Omega versus Okada, or Drew McIntyre versus Lashley, or really any match in general for wrestling, and give a rating on that. But when it comes to the cinematic wrestling style matches, I was thinking to myself, there should be a different kind of rating system. Like, maybe instead of treating it like a full-fledged wrestling match, they should come up with a wrestling movie rating system. Go a little bit like, man, what was it? Like, do the 4-star rating system of, oh man, I am royally screwed. 4 stars, 4 stars, 4 stars. Sorry, I'm double checking on my research here. Let's see. 4-star rating system would be Roger Ebert. Yeah, that's him again. Sorry about that, everyone. But yeah, Roger Ebert had the 4-star rating system, and a lot of movies he's rated over the years before his passing was always at the 4-star rating and never go beyond it. And Dave Meltzer went beyond the 5-star rating system he gave wrestling matches. But when I heard the whole he can't give it a rating because they're edited, I was thinking to myself, okay, so what about when WWE does tapings? Do they not count now or something? But that's a different subject. Because I was thinking to myself, like, okay, I get why he didn't rate this match. In fact, he didn't rate any of the cinematic matches. Like, he didn't rate Final Deletion, he didn't rate Delete or Decay, he did not rate Final Beat, the brawl between Adam Cole and He Who Must Not Be Named, The Undertaker and AJ Styles. He didn't rate Bray Wyatt and John Cena. He didn't rate The Elite versus The Inner Circle. He didn't rate the greatest wrestling match ever. He never rated any of those matches. He didn't rate the legendary halftime heat episode they did for Empty Arena, the Wyatt Family Compound match, TNA Team Apocalypto, never had, or the House of Horrors match, and we should never talk about that ever again. But you get my point. Like, there are tons of matches that were filmed in a cinematic sense or done in a cinematic sense where he's never given it a rating. I want to say he probably did do Halftime Heat, but let's double check on that. Let's see if he rated that match all those years ago. If he did, then maybe you should take that back. Probably not, but you know. Let's see. Nope. As much as an iconic moment that was, he did not rate that show. So it's out of the question. Yeah, so he never rated that show. From what I'm looking on Cage Match, I could be wrong, and they rated it somewhere else. But yeah, you get my point. Dave Meltzer has never rated any of the cinematic wrestling matches that have been done throughout the decades, or repopularized by Matt Hardy and the others. So you got this, and now you're wondering, should they be rated in some sense? And I'm going for Roger Ebert style, where they do a 4-star rank system. And instead of analyzing it as a wrestling match, they could take a look at it as a cinematic event. Because heading into Extreme Rules soon, they're gonna have 3 cinematic wrestling matches, a bar fight with Sheamus and Jeff Hardy, eye for an eye between Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins, and the Swamp match between deep-loving, continuity-filled Bray Wyatt against his former ally, the Monster Among Men, Braun Strowman, his face of destruction. And I'm hyped for that last one, for the most part, because Vince is not involved in that, so, yeah. And a lot of people really did work on these stuff. Like, there is a lot of passion put into it, especially since it's also now Undertaker's, for now, at least, unless he's called up again, last match ever, as he's hoping it would be, since that was probably the best thing you can give him at his stage of his career. But yeah, there is a ton of stuff that should be taken into consideration when coming to rating a show like shows like these. Like, maybe you could break down more of the rating, like how the editing's done, how the cinematography's done, how the quality of the wrestlers are doing. Like, maybe rate it like a wrestling match, but add the cinematic elements and do up to 4 stars at best. Because because let's be real, you really don't. Can you really imagine? I can't remember which Young Buck, but one of the Young Bucks suplexing Sammy Guevara over and over, all the way from one end of the stadium to the other end of the stadium, and you're like, come on, let's be real. That is impossible. Even if it was, yeah, like, even for stage, that's virtually impossible unless you're The Undertaker, and The Undertaker could theoretically do that at his prime, because he's supernatural. But yeah, anyways, yeah, like, I felt like, yeah, the cinematic system of wrestling, and also the Great War in Impact Wrestling, which everyone loves, but I felt like, yeah, maybe they should start contemplating whether or not they should come up with a new rating system to discuss the idea of, hey, we can't judge it as a straight-up wrestling match. We can judge it as a storytelling rating perspective and probably do up to 4 stars, like the Roger Ebert style, and judge it on quality presentation, editing, storytelling, and all that stuff. Like, it could work, hopefully, and I would certainly be alright with it, because a lot of the cinematic matches have been helping everyone through this whole horrible time, and allow us to work things that have never been done before. Like, everyone imagined that Undertaker and AJ Styles before the virus hit was straight up classic wrestling match because it's AJ Styles and he could protect Taker. And then you gotta remember, like, But then you gotta remember, like, oh, it's an empty arena. Wow, that's bitterly depressing. But then they were like, no, let's do a boneyard match. Granted, they could have called it a graveyard match, but, keep the children's innocence. Yeah, keep the children's innocence when you have Taker going ahead and screaming son of a bitch, or breaking his arm and bleeding it profusely, or AJ Styles trying to kill him, or relatively anything, or mystical powers, or Bray Wyatt doing horror style aesthetics like he's Nightmare on Elm Street. And then there's the crazy psychopathic Johnny Gargano losing his mind, and there's Hangman Page getting drunk off his ass with Kenny Omega, drinking milk, and then you got Randy Orton being Randy Orton, so really that the whole "they think of the children" is not going to be used a lot. But yeah, so I've watched a ton of the Cinematic matches. In fact, I watched the Bray Wyatt Cena one regularly, religiously almost, because it was just that good from a deconstructing character perspective, and really go deep into what interpreting what the Cinemax stuff was telling you about and whatnot, telling it from a story perspective instead of a straight up wrestling perspective, because really a lot of them are pretty good classics. I haven't watched the greatest wrestling match ever because, one, the tagline is stupid. Two, that gives horrible unwanted pressure to everyone in the world that would think that was a great idea, and saying, okay, Randy Orton, Edge, I know you're in your 9-year prime anymore. I know you're still able to go. I know you're able to still deliver quality matches, but we need you to somehow beat Okada and Omega 4 times in a row. Make that 4 times as great. No, go bigger than that. We gotta beat Ricky Dragon, Steamboat, and Ric Flair, and all that bullshit. So, yeah, and I haven't seen the Adam Cole Shinmac event because for various uncomfortable reasons I do not want to get into. Maybe at a later date, but right now I can't for mental reasons. Oh my god. So yeah, and I loved that Undertaker got to end his career by bringing some old concept back that's kind of been forgotten since Matt Hardy left. In fact, everything Matt Hardy did was the Cinemax stuff because of how insane he was. In fact, Ultimate Deletion is considered by some to be a classic, other than the annoyance of Michael Cole say, "We apologize for what you're about to see, because we clearly understand how you, the audience who pay good money to see our stuff, feel." I think. We do know how they operate, right? But yeah, so what do all of you think? Should cinematic wrestling matches be rated but done in a different way? Should they be told in a different perspective, a different way to tell the story? And with it growing more and more nowadays, and probably going to stick around even after the pandemic is over, will this stick around, and will a new rating system rise to the occasion in order to come up with this? Or will it just be a fan perspective viewpoint instead of a wrestling journalist's perspective viewpoint? And except for grading A, B, and C, I'm talking about like the Dave Meltzer system or the Roger Ebert system. But, and the one thing I did want to mention is, I'm curious to know, are there director's cuts of these? Because I would love to see what was cut from them. Because you can't imagine to tell me that they did this all in one big take and not have cuts and edits to them. Because it'd be insane to hear that there was more insanity with Bray Wyatt and John Cena. There was more action with The Undertaker and AJ Styles. There was more insanity with the Stadium Stampede match. But who knows? We'll probably see it in about 20 years from now when the director's cuts are released. But I digress. So, those were my thoughts. Should cinematic wrestling matches be rated? Tell me what you all think in the comments or on Twitter. This was Neo Reality Entertainment. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and donate. Stay tuned for more.